So students, you can't appreciate all of the technical difficulties we have gone through to get this done today. It looks like we're going to be able to bring you Scott West, if not my own handsome image, but you know all about that. So this, I think, will be fine. So we're going to be visiting for the next few minutes with Scott West. And Scott is kind of a renaissance man of broadcasting. There's not much that he has not done. And we could talk on any number of different subjects here, but this is a sports media class. And so we're going to primarily talk with Scott about sports broadcasting. I want to ask him, first of all, obviously about his sports background. And the best thing, Scott, that you're probably known for is working with the Dallas Cowboys.
That would be
on
correct.
The radio network
Mm-hmm.
a number of years ago, and you were there during the glory days of the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's likely that none of your students have ever seen a Cowboys team win a Super Bowl.
That's exactly right.
It's been that long, and during the time that I was with the network, yeah, that was the years when they won their 3 Super Bowls, when they were having the success that Troy, the triplets, all of those stories, all of those, glorious highlights. I had a chance to be a part of that period of time with the Cowboys. And it really, it's something that it wasn't planned. It wasn't something calculated. I ended up working for a music station that traditionally, those types of stations never carried sports. They were known for music and contests and prizes and all that. And when they decided to make the move to get the Cowboys contract from a traditional news station, which John, you and I work for now, KRLD, and the Texas State Network, that was kind of a seismic shift for radio. It has become the norm now. What KVIL started in 1991 is something that stations all over the nation started to do. Sports radio switched in large part from being a typical AM station product to being an FM product. And Ron Chapman, who was the pretty much the architect of that at the time, he was the morning man at KVIL. He was not the general manager, but he sort of had the kind of power of one. And he, along with the general manager at that time, engineered the deal to get KVIL to carry the Cowboys and become the flagship station for the network. And that's what eventually, because I went there simply to be a sportscaster, be a sports director. And at the time, I just intended to do what the guy before me had done, which was cover sports, do reports in the morning and afternoon, and see where things would go from there. But maybe 2 months after I started that job, he came over to my cubicle and told me that, and this was in 1989, he told me my life was about to change in a few months, and it did.
Had to be very exciting news.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, prior to that, I guess my introduction to sports in Dallas-Fort Worth had been while I had been with another music station at the time, K104, and its sports director, Chris Arnold, who still doing sports, has been doing sports for about 40 years in this market. He and I would, on the weekends, because we were doing a TV show, a video music show in the middle 80s, when he was out of town, I had to do his sportscasts on the weekend, which was usually on a Saturday or Sunday. And most of the time it was a Sunday. He would do this recap. And if he wasn't able to call in with his recap, then I did it. And I ended up going out to Valley Ranch, and he introduced me to players. And, I kind of became familiar with and got a chance to go to games and spend some time in the locker rooms with the Mavericks and the Rangers and the Cowboys. But I was still a jock. I was still a DJ. But once I got to KVIL in 1989, I was just, that was my full-time deal, split shift. And for a year prior to us actually covering the games and carrying the games, I traveled with the team on away games, and it was an interesting experience.
Scott, as you get a chance, you're kind of lean to your left slightly. We'll get more of your face if you'll. That's better. You're more centered now. That.
Okay.
So you were, and again, I want to keep this fairly brief for your benefit, but you were, and correct me if I misstate this, but you were the pregame and postgame host of and halftime host of the programs on the Dallas Cowboys radio network at that time.
Yes, pregame, halftime, and postgame. Correct.
Talk about one of the things we've talked about in this class is interviewing athletes and coaches, and you've done that at the highest level. And I still hear you talking to members of the Cowboys or former Cowboys from time to time for one thing or another. But talk a little bit about some of the skills that you developed in interviewing athletes and coaches.
Well, I think that if I knew then what I know now, my interviews would have been a lot better. And I appreciate that. I think that what I learned after my sports tenure, my years in that arena were over, is that the more I could sort of get a full and understand me, guys, when I say this, that I learned that there is a relationship that between reporters, sportscasters, and athletes, that if it's not rooted in you really wanting to try to find the truth about something and get to the bottom of and learn what it is that they do and why they do it, as opposed to coming into it with a preconceived notion, as oftentimes some of the people that have coached me up in my post sports days have reminded me, is that you come in with this media perspective and you tend to approach things as if you really know what it is that these guys do and why they do it. And I've learned if you've not strapped it on, if you've not run a deep in or a deep out, if you've not, done what they do, then you are not going to really be able to ask the right kinds of questions, because you're going to come into it with this attitude that, well, I think I know why he dropped that ball, or why he didn't run the right route, or why he threw that interception. There is so much that I didn't know at the time. And so my questions, and to this day, what I think I try to do, as I still from time to time talk to athletes, is I try to use what I've learned in the years since, and my appreciation for what it is that these guys really do and what goes into how they game plan and why they play the way they play, why certain things happen on the field the way they happen. It's enhanced my interview style. It's enhanced what I do. I guess if I were to tell any of your students the best thing that they can do is, you want to be a sponge and you want to learn this game from the people who play it. You want to spend time with coaches. You want to spend time with athletes whom have a good knowledge of the game. Because believe it or not, there's some guys out there that, they're physically gifted, but they're not as cerebral. It doesn't mean that they, are not sharp players and can't play the game, but there are certain guys that you want to gravitate to. And I guess my best examples of that is, I spent time talking to the Michael Irvins when I was covering. I spent time talking to those guys who I knew, the quarterbacks. I spent time talking to players that, had a really good overview of the game. And so that enhanced my interview style, enhanced my ability when I did those pregame interviews and halftime and postgame interviews, to ask at least questions that were designed to get, the kinds of answers that I thought were going to benefit the audience. But in hindsight, I can look at some of those interviews and I can say, you know what, man, if I had asked this question, or if I had not been so media minded, I might have come up with a better way to get at a certain answer. But that was something that I came away with over the years, and realized that sometimes you can go into these interviews with preconceived notions that are so far and away from what is really the right questions to ask, the the right perspective. And at the end of the day, if you're going to do this job, you want to do it in a way that best informs your listeners. Um, and so I guess hopefully I didn't go off on a tangent too far on you,
No,
and share with you what it is that I've learned about interviewing. Because yeah, you interview a Jerry Jones, you interview a Troy Aikman. There are certain questions that you just know to ask. But to really become better at giving the listener a good picture and a good snapshot of the athlete, the game, all of those things. You want to do your homework, and you want to really know uh, before you go, and not just kind of come into it with what you think is your understanding of why a certain play happened, why a team lost, why they won, all of those things. Because
let
if you
me
didn't,
summarize, and because I'm trying to cover a lot of ground in a short time, but sounds to me that you would agree that you need to come into it with a certain amount of humility and
yes,
willingness to learn, not thinking you already know it all, and then
absolutely,
also keeping that audience in mind,
yes.
because you want to provide them with what you think they will want to know and maybe need to know, and and those are important attitudes to bring into it.
Critical critical, John Mark, because I listen to sports radio now, like a lot of your students. And this is not to malign or to call out. This is just to just as I'm speaking as a professional. I'm speaking as somebody that, as a broadcaster, um, and being self-critical and recognizing that there are a lot of times when my perspective on it was just wrong, because I didn't really know what I know now, or what I learned after being able to kind of get uh, a good critique from people who, they're not trying to hurt me, they're not trying to malign me, they're trying to say, listen, there's a certain reason why that play got called, and you're saying that he, got picked off, or he, you know, didn't score that touchdown, or that team didn't win that game because of X, Y, or Z. When a further dive into it on just what happened from the player, the coach perspective, gives you a much clearer picture of why it happened. And it's not necessarily what you thought it was.
Mhm.
But talk radio these days and sports radio has become strictly entertainment in some aspects. And it's become um, that host or that station or that show's desire to be funny, to be whimsical, to be witty, and to entertain. But we have another responsibility. We're supposed to inform and entertain.
Mhm.
So if you're going to be informative, then you want to really be able to share the truth of what's going on.
Another thing Scott mentioned there that I'll just underline is the preparation, is being ready to ask the good questions, the valuable questions, and so there and that's another thing we've talked about. Scott, I only want to keep you for another couple of minutes or so, but what are the opportunities that you see out there for young people in sports media, and what do they need to be able to take advantage of those opportunities?
These are some interesting times in radio, John Mark, as you know. In a lot of instances, stations are downsizing, um, especially with what we're going through now. What we're going through now is going to impact staffing and how radio does what it does moving forward. What I'm seeing more of in the sports arena, from a audio standpoint, from a broadcast standpoint, is I'm seeing podcasters.
Mhm.
Um, Podcasting is becoming huge with sports. There are sports podcast networks. Um, there is a guy, Bill Simmons, who owns a podcast network, or at least he did. He sold it. He's still a part of it. It's called The Ringer. And a lot of your students are aware of this, because podcasting has become such a big deal with
Mhm.
students and those that you teach there, that we're talking to now. So they're very much familiar with the podcasting arena. That doesn't mean that terrestrial radio is necessarily done, but if you're looking at how do I get a job on the ticket? How do I get a job on the fan? How do I become a sportscaster for uh, pick a station, any station in the United States? I think that opportunity is not as prevalent as it was when I started, even as prevalent as 10 years ago. There's a guy that I work with who is a play-by-play guy for women's basketball at UNT. And Zach Babb is talented, man. He's really good. He also does some sideline reporting for UNT football. He has been a sportscaster doing some of these ticket tickers. He did that for a while, but that's something that this whole COVID situation has kind of put a monkey wrench in. And I was talking to him not too long ago, and with that change, now stations are looking at, well, what are we going to do moving forward? Do we need to have as big a staff? And so podcasting is something that you can do that's not dependent upon a station hiring you. It's not dependent upon you having to, wait in line to see who's going to leave and move on or retire. If you've got a USB mic, a computer editing software, you got a podcast. And again, the validity of it, the strength of it is going to be based upon how much research you do, how solid, your knowledge base is, and your ability to put together something that is going to be credible, because these podcasts they're getting attention, and athletes are, being interviewed on them, and teams are recognizing them. The podcast is no longer this little homemade project that it used to be a few years ago. It's been legitimized, and it's real. And that represents, I think, an opportunity for anybody that's serious about doing sports, not just about being heard and just about having an opportunity to share your opinion, but that is really looking to be a credible information source and somebody that can interact with these teams. And that to me is where I see this the opportunities for your students, and where I see the audio end of broadcasting going.
Okay, great. We don't want to keep you any longer, Scott, but thank you for the time, and congratulations on the career you've had up to now. And I know it's going to go on for a long time yet. So,
well,
thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
John Mark, anytime. I appreciate anything I can do for you, sir.
Okay, great. Scott West, everybody, from Dallas, and a longtime Dallas radio broadcaster in sports radio and many other forms of media. Thanks, Scott.
All right, we'll see you in the weekend.
Okay. And
all right,
Russ, I guess that's all.